The Reeves Pulley Company was formed by brothers Marshall and Milton Reeves in 1888. They purchased the Edinburgh Pulley Company and renamed it the Reeves Pulley Company. Milton had a fascination with automobiles and is credited for building the first automobile in 1897, calling it a motorcycle. They also designed a variable transmission while working at a sawmill. This transmission design was used on sawmills, line shafts, and his motorcycle. He also held the patent on a muffler design he used to quiet the annoying sound of the motorcycle's gas engine. Marshall had formed the Hoosier Boy Cultivator Company and built an extensive line of farm equipment including hay stackers, threshers, and clover hullers. In 1879, Marshall changed the company name to Reeves and Company and started manufacturing steam traction engines. Between the two brothers, they held over 150 patents. Both men were deeply committed to their faith and were pastors at their own churches. Many of the Reeves catalogs contained a sermon within the literature. The Reeves farm engines were offered from 1911 to 1915. In 1913, the 1 and 2 horsepower engines were offered, replacing the 1.5-horse engine. No expense was spared in manufacturing. Cylinders were reamed, brass bushings were used on the wrist pins, and ornate pinstriping was incorporated. Emphasis on finish was evident, with sanding and filling operations prior to paint to produce the required smooth finish. The engine line was sold to Cummins Machine Company in 1915, and engines were not produced after that date. The high cost and low sales of the engine line contributed to the end of production. This is my 1-horse Reeves Pulley Company engine. It's rated at 600 RPM, which is pretty high for an open crankshaft engine. Most of my engines are about 200 to 300 RPM. Some of them are as low as about 120. The Mogul that we're working on is rated at 450. So 600 is quite high for a manually lubricated engine where you have to go around with an oil can and lubricate everything. I've had this engine about 2 years, bought it in this condition right here. It is a running engine. The paint is really good shape. I don't know if it's original or not. If it's not, it's a very good reproduction. It's got the correct pinstriping on it, and that makes me think it's probably original, just because a lot of people don't take the time to do the pinstriping, but I'm not sure on that. It is serial number 3559. I don't know what year it was built. They built these type of engines from about 1912 to about 1918, and then the company sold, so they quit building engines. They built from 1 horse to 12 horse. I've seen a 12 horse. There are a few 3 and 4s around, but I have not seen another one. I'm sure there is something somewhere. But anyway, so we'll go over a few of the parts and then we'll see if it'll run. So this crank guard here keeps the connecting rod from throwing grease out, and also keeps the operator from getting their oil can batted out of the park when they reach in here to oil these mains. These are oiled mains. You have to put oil in there, and periodically during running you have to do stuff like that, and you also have to oil some of these oil points on the engine. So this is the governor. It sets the speed. This is a hit and miss engine, so it pulls a full fuel charge and then fires, and if it overspeeds, then it coasts down. It holds the ignition and the exhaust valve off, so it can't pull any fuel or fire, and coasts back down and then pulls another full charge. If it was working, it would run all the time. A throttle governed engine will only run as fast as the fuel that's supplied to it, and that's controlled through a butterfly. This engine does not have that. So these hit and miss engines are for intermittent load and not really good speed regulation. So we have a drip oiler for oiling the piston, and there's the piston right there. It is igniter fired. I'll do another video on how igniters work, but there's basically a set of points in there, and it's powered off of a battery and a coil to provide spark for the engine. This is a speed set. You can vary the speed where this is set. We're not running anywhere near 600 RPM. There's just no reason to do that when it's just idling like this. The water hopper here is for cooling, and you fill that with water and it evaporates and cools the cylinder. We don't have any water in there today because we're not going to run it very long. Here's the intake valve. It's an atmospheric intake, so it pulls it open when the piston goes down on the intake stroke. The exhaust valve is cammed, so that's what this linkage does. Here's the muffler. Thank you, Mr. Reeves, for creating that sort of technology for us. The cart is, I don't know that the cart is original. I can't find any literature on the cart to tell me if the trucks are Reeves trucks or not. So I don't know about that. Here's the fuel tank. Runs on gasoline. Today's gasoline isn't really right for these engines. Just idling, I'll run 87 octane in it, but if I'm going to work it, I'll cut it with some kerosene to lower the octane rating. This side we have the mixer and a choke plate for starting. This engine runs really well, so usually it starts just fine and you don't even have to choke it. So here, we'll see if it'll run today. Well, that's another video done. Tina said she likes the little Reeves, and I do too. It's the smallest engine that I own. Weighs about 300 pounds. Reeves built engines from 1 horsepower through 12. I've seen a 12. It's the only other Reeves I've seen. I know there's quite a few 3 and 4s, but not very many 1 horsepowers. So anyway, Tina says like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.